Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video I do want to talk about, well, MCOC in the hindsight of 2024 and looking back, breaking down the things that I did like about the game, that I didn't like about the game, and this is in general going to be kind of a state of the game type of video. And again, I will discuss each of these topics individually. They will not necessarily be grouped in massive positives and negatives, because I do think a lot of these things are more nuanced than that. I do believe that, a lot of great ideas might have been executed better, or a lot of, good comes with the bad and vice versa in plenty of these aspects. So we're going to start with the changes to the champion acquisition. The fact that we could start acquiring 7-star champions now we have one in Realm Event Milestones. We had some login calendar champions every couple of months when we, could get the selector in between Colossus and Thing and Korg, and got Shield as 7-star just for logging in. Then obviously we do have the Traders Outpost things where, every set of Saga there's a champion that anybody can access as a 7-star if you do all the things and collect, the individual pieces and tickets and stuff like that. So I do think that is a great change, because previously, it was either Grande Arena, which is an option that's realistically been taken away from us because there is no 7-star arena, and you do want to chase the 7-star champions, or, you get lucky with the crystals. You either collect the shards or purchase them when, the said champions are coming out. So, multiplying ways how people acquire 7-star champions, I think, has been great, because obviously Kabam has an upside for that, because they can drive the engagement of players and things they otherwise wouldn't necessarily want to do. And on the flip side, people are getting, their rosters expanded without the monetary incentive by playing the game, which again, I think is what Kabam should focus on more, making people play the game more, opposed to forcing them to purchase things. So the diversification of champion acquisition, I think, has been overall kind of low-key a great move by Kabam. That said, I do think, again, some of these things have not necessarily worked out as great as Kabam would have. And I think the whole Deathless saga has been a great example of that. Because I think as an event, well, number one, the 4 Deathless champions themselves definitely, could have been better. Comparing the hype levels that people had when the Deathless Champions were announced to, the release of Guillotine, and then it turning out that Guillotine is probably one of the better changes that they made, and then, we had the Deathless King Groot, which, is fine. And then we had the Deathless Vision, who was bad, and then we have Deathless She-Hulk, who I think is genuinely a worse version of She-Hulk, but still the best Deathless champion. There is going to be a separate video coming soon on the Deathless She-Hulk to showcase what I mean by that. But, a lot of those things kind of fell into the Kabam's recent trend of champions being more complicated, doing more things less effectively for less value back to you. I guess a great example here would be previously She-Hulk had Petrify in level 2, that did the job just fine. And then she had, I believe, Weakness or Exhaustion in level 1, which is a different set of debuff. Now they split up that Petrify in between level 1 and level 2, in between Wither and Spectre. Took away one of the debuffs. Effectively, either of the special attacks will do one or the other thing, not both at the same time, as she could do before. And stuff like that just kind of exemplifies champions in 2024, unfortunately. Obviously, Deathless Thanos does look great, and is set to be awesome, but we're gonna have to see that. However, on the weak side, I definitely want to mention the champions overall in 2024. Now, not only in 2024 they managed to produce more absolute duds and memes than in previous years, in between, Patriot and North Star and Silver Sable and the Deathless Vision. They also made just about every single one of them, very complicated, with absolute mountains of walls of text, with fairly specific playstyles, with fairly set rotations, and they seem to be going more in this micromanaging not only who you choose to use in between, forcing you down specific tags that you have to comply with all of the challenges, but also exactly how you make, how you do the fights whilst you're in there. And previously when you use champions like Hyperion, spam heavy attacks and spam level 1s. Spam level 3s or spam heavies in level 3s, or go for whichever special you want according to the situation that requires specific piece of utility. Now you can't really do that. Either a champion counters that fight whilst doing the one set rotation, or you don't want to use that champion pretty much at all. It's kind of like, allow Prowler, but I can even use him as an example. Like, if you can't use your level 2s freely, his damage can be just garbage. And the same goes for so many of the champions. You do exactly what you're told, when you're told, how you're told, against whichever champions you're told to use these guys, when Kabam says you. And that just makes the game feel a lot less fun, a lot less in the hands of players, rather than in the hands of Kabam. And overall, again, the second half of 2024 champions was better, in between, Scream and Jack and Count Nefaria and Dazzler. Still, overall, I will remember this year as the year that completely unbalanced, unfair defenders got released that made the game actively worse in terms of enjoyment. They are making the game feel much more like rock, paper, scissors, because regardless of how skilled you are, there's nothing you can do unless you have a good counter to these specific matchups. And again, I believe the game would be better off without these champions in Serpent, Bullseye, and Enchantress, and fairly middle of the pack type of attackers. I don't think we had like any top champion in any class released this year. Aside from Serpent being the defensively there. But, if you're talking about offensive top champions, I'd hard to name you like a top 3 in any of the classes for all of these champions. So I'd say kind of undertuned or overcomplicated, undertuned most of these champions here. Right. On the bright side, though, where we do need to flip in the in-game champions, I do think it was a great year for champion buffs, in between the Glorious Guardians, which I don't think all are amazing, but every single one of them clearly got better, and just about every single one of them will have uses in the game. And I love to see all the champions regain some of the glory. I love the fact that Mr. Sinister now is one of the top mutant champions in the game. I love the fact that Red Skull is one of the top champions in the game, because they are, regardless of what anybody wants to say, champions like Mr. Sinister and Red Skull are way more iconic to the Marvel brand than, Count Nefaria, for instance, who is, relatively high up in the science class. And it's, it's a trend that I hope to see continues when we have some old goated champions like Captain America's or Iron Man, or, fan favorites get a good reworks and become great. That generally offsets a lot of bad in this year. The fact that I actively, look for Red Skull in Battlegrounds matches and draft him a lot and win fights with Red Skull, it just feels great because I'm not playing with a random champion that I have never heard of, that I have no, emotional attachment to. And the fact that, they are just quality additions to the game. So I do think the buff program in general has been very, very good, producing quality results, even though you'd kind of wish we get more buffs because there are so many champions that desperately need it. That's a definite huge plus, by the way. A big minus, I believe, has been Battleground stagnation. I think a lot of experiments that we have had with Battlegrounds recently have been, less than ideal. The switches to a single meta didn't seem to work. I understand the thought process behind it, kind of, especially because, the way Battleground season rewards work is that it only matters where you finish in the last meta of the season. So, if you're going to be ranking up champions, you're just going to want to rank up for the last meta. So when we had 4, then the first 3 metas were kind of like looked at as relatively insignificant as the filler, and then you focus on the last one. I think 2 metas is probably the best option here, which is what they are going back to. But yeah, this shifting in between 4 metas, 2 metas, 1 meta, it definitely hasn't been great for Battlegrounds overall, especially if we have like bad, unenjoyable, month of Battlegrounds. Then on top of all of that, I think the rewards are quite outdated for Battlegrounds at this point. Finishing, let's say, in top 100 players in the world would only give you 2,500 Titan shards. It's quite pathetic. It really is. Not even a full 7-star crystal. Yes, a lot of the rewards budget would be going to the trophy tokens where the Battleground store did get updated, but in general, just like, receiving the 2,500 Titan shards being like one of the that would be like top 3 finish in Alliance War, for instance. It just feels very, very bad. Not to mention the rewards in like Alliance and Solo event, where now I'm in next, and next, routinely finishes in top 10 in the Alliance scoring of the Battlegrounds, and the rewards just, feel very, very outdated. In several aspects that Kabam hasn't updated the rank rewards, I believe, in Battlegrounds in like well over a year or something. So the game has moved on a very long way since then, and there is absolutely no question that currently in the game, Battlegrounds is the premium game mode that needs a lot more love and care from Kabam. Be that, making sure that players are actually enjoying what metas they are making, be that, updating rewards where it feels to the proportional amount of effort that people are putting in, and in general, just keeping a closer eye on, because again, the amount of crappy metas, the amount of grief that Kabam gets from these stagnant rewards is really not great. So I definitely wish that they would pay closer attention to Battlegrounds, but not anything that I have said in regards to Battlegrounds doesn't come close to the Event Quest. The Event Quest situation is just abysmal. The fact that the highest difficulty in the Event Quest right now is Thronebreaker, and the fact that effectively I don't care about the single reward that is in the Thronebreaker difficulty is abysmal. This is several generations behind the line. There are no Titan shards, there are no 7-star materials really, there are no, anything that should be there for kind of like the reoccurring monthly content. On top of it all, it takes forever. If you're not going to update the content and the rewards, at least make them easier to be acquired by making the quests a lot shorter or something. There's no units now in the top 2 difficulties as you're exploring it, making it complete kind of waste of time. Which, again, I do understand that some game modes lose, the priority and standing in the game over time. Like previously, AQ and Prestige was end of be all, and for a while it was Alliance War, then Kabam tried to push incursions. And it kind of rotates what matters the most in the game. But at the moment, currently, there is no area in the game that is as outdated and as poorly managed as monthly event quests. And the worst thing is that you kind of have to do them in order to do the Para Gauntlet, which again is Para Gauntlet, not Valiant Gauntlet. So even that is a generation behind the line. And the rewards for it, again, for the current game where we're at, are just not good enough. The only reason people do this at all, the only reason why I do it is because I still have 6-star champions that I do want to ascend, and there's an ascension or the dust, for an ascension there every month, and I do want to get as much tier 2 dust as I can, because I still can't get all the champions 7 stars immediately, and there are again always several champions that I want to ascend every month, and I just try to get as many ascension dust as I can. But even that loses its relevance, as now the game is going to be entering the place of 7-star rank 4s and 7-star rank 3s being the mainstay, making the ascended champions significantly less useful in the very near future. So this is like an emergency under the line place for Kabam. The one thing that I do like that Kabam has changed their approach to would definitely be incursions. Where are the incursions actually? Can I even find them? Or they're just out somewhere in the game? Autumn of Agony. I mean, Autumn of Agony was cool too. Not Battlegrounds, not chronologically. Incursions, there you go. Glorious games. I think what they have done with incursions overall is quite good, because incursions has never been like a central focal point of the game. Incursions has and will never be at a place where you want to play incursions every day, and that is the game mode that you grind out. And Kabam kind of changed that, where you can do incursions every month and go for all the rewards and get the bonuses and get the artifacts. Or every 3 months you have the saga incursions, which are quicker, which forces you to use different champions, thus bringing in different strategies to the game and thus making it more fun. For instance, the moment you realize Silk can stun lock opponents very easily with a simple hack addition, and you have guaranteed picks of those hacks, so you have like a full-on strategy how to do the entire thing, and it was fun. Finding the matchups that she can and can't do, and still having a viable backup option, so on and so forth. Enjoy that. Just like having to use bullseye and power stinging everybody and critting everybody to death. That type of experience is, I think, what we need more of. Now, I can understand that Kabam can't do it or doesn't want to do it every month, but having something like that every 3 months, where you do an incursions run fully with brand new sets of champions, exploring new different combinations of hacks, and Kabam adjusting the hacks, I think overall has been like one of the better additions. That's not in your face, not an absolute must to do, not something that you have to grind in day and out, but something that is a fresh change of pace and a nice experience. So I do think that Kabam has done great on the saga incursions. Love that change to the game. And the second thing that I do want to talk about is raids. So Alliance quests, obviously nothing listed now. Raids week was last week, but in general I do think that raids have been great for the game. If it was not for the cost, I would gladly do raids every week. And again, with raids is significantly better rewards for significantly less time commitment over the course of the week. The best thing about raids is that you effectively get it done in a day or two. And they do change the fights, they do get it wrong, they do get it right sometimes. I'm not saying it has been perfect, but overall raids feel so much better than Alliance Quest, to a point where I don't really want to play Alliance. Well, I have never really wanted to play Alliance Quest, but with how much worse the Alliance Quest rewards are compared to raids rewards, and how much more tedious Alliance Quest is compared to raids. Again, I just wish I could do raids every week, even if it wasn't not such a great disparity in the rewards that we get. So addition of raids I think has been great, and overall Kabam has done a solid job with raids. Love that. The biggest dislike of the year, however, unquestionably has been the AI, and that's just one of those things that is impossible to deal with, really. The AI issue is over the course of this year, specifically much more than previous years, has at times made the game borderline unplayable. There was a time a couple months ago where I could not stream the game longer for like an hour and a half, because I just get irrationally angry, because you do everything perfect and then they are just randomly whacks you in the face doing some impossible things, or you have the perfect game and you lose it just because AI refused to throw a special attack for 35 seconds and your opponent outscores you because of speed. And that also often has like a cascading effect, where you're doing a fight perfectly for the first half, AI just, starts doing some inexplicable shit, not throwing special attacks, and you get frustrated. Then once you're frustrated, you start making mistakes, and then you get hit in the face, and then it all snowballs, and it just leads to a horrible, horrible, horrible gaming experience. And worst of it all, throughout it all, has been Kabam communication. They're like, we have never actively changed the AI, where I actually have recently gotten kind of like a copy of a code of Kabam's AI, where it's true they never had to actively change the AI because every single value in the AI is kind of like a single variable where they can modify it all. So yeah, I think they nearly effectively killed their own game with that AI. If they hadn't gotten it even slightly better, I'm not saying it's perfect right now, but I think that could have been the end of the game, because if they make it that unplayable, nothing else really matters. Like, it doesn't matter how many champions you have and what rank they are, if entering the fight you can never get like some semi-consistent results out of it. So let's hope the AI gets better. One of the bright sides that I did want to discuss over this year has been Kabam Crashed as well. And the Kabam live streams and his appearance on them, because I do think the way he breaks things down, be that on forum and be that on these live streams, is always kind of like a good experience. Even if I disagree with him a lot, which I do, we definitely do see things from, completely different opposing points of view. And throughout all that, I can always kind of see his point, even if I disagree with it, but there is like a rational human logic behind it. And I am very happy that he has gotten more involved with community, appearing on the streams and, on forums as well. It is significant improvement to some of the Kabam's ex-employees who were often, incredibly snarky, sarcastic, snide towards people, and just had this, general unpleasant aura about them a lot of the time. Not always, you could have cordial, good conversations and great moments with them as well, but there were definitely even more situations where you just, looked at the response of an issue and you got the feeling that, we shouldn't be complaining at all. Kabam's always doing their best and we're just being ungrateful and, we know nothing and, Kabam's perfect type of situation. So you don't get that with Kabam Crash, because he kind of breaks things down from their point of view, where, again, you can see the points of disagreement quite clearly, but he never kind of gives you attitude about that. And again, it's quite often very useful information, as well as the things that go wrong with Kabam. A lot of times throughout this year, I noticed that Kabam genuinely has a thought process and logic behind it, even if it doesn't go down perfectly well. And I think that is still an improvement. I do think they do lack the ability to put themselves in the shoes of players, as perfectly demonstrated in the banquet event. And they did a lot of changes to the event. They, added a different level of the crystal, even though it wasn't what the Valiant players hoped for. Still better than, pulling the 6-star things. They, made the Realm event. That's overall the acquisition that people got for X amount of units spent was effectively better than just about any other event this year. But at the same time, they increased the needed amount of units for this event because their Kabam just can't help themselves. Could you imagine how much better this event could have been if, number one, for instance, in order to get to the Isophene milestone, you would only need to spend like 8k units? Been great, right? I think like, 50-60% of the complaints would go away. It was like 8k, 10k units and you get here. But they increased it to 15k, which just immediately soured their event to a ton of people because they could not get those 15k units, and they watched everybody else get that stuff except, from them. So that created a lot of, envy, jealousy, FOMO, you call it as you will, but, a lot of negative emotions. Same thing with these crystals. They took away a lot of filler items from the superior bunker crystals and made sure that all the items in there would be usable to 7-star champions, which, is a good step. In theory, makes a lot of sense. There's logic behind it. I can respect that. What they did at the process, made the values of the good items, abysmally poor, to a point where hardly anything you ever pulled from these crystals was worth 300 units. Thus, they made opening these crystals feel like shit. And if they made opening these crystals feel like shit, they made the entire event feel like shit. again, there's logic, there's reason behind them doing these things. They don't always work out. And, they should be able to see that. They don't. But in past, I don't think they ever would have thought about, these changes, which ultimately are leading in a better direction, in my opinion. Just like with the alternate 7-star acquisition, where, free-to-play players can get, Mr. Sinister. You need to whale out if you want to get that dupe, but everybody playing this game as a free-to-play can get that. Mr. Sinister. And the one thing that I also wanted to mention here on the lack of hindsight, in a sense, where, Kabam is making strides, and I talked about different champion acquisition, like Deathless, where we, for the first time ever, were collecting pieces of champions and getting them together. Despite the champions themselves being underwhelming, now that Korean challenges have come out, now that Thanos hype is real, now that there will be a specific objective to dupe that 7-star Thanos or obtain the 7-star Thanos in the near future, a lot of people are real, I don't have, 2 pieces of these champions. I'm not going to be able to get the 7-star Thanos. And Kabam said the expectation of the fact that you have to play this game actively for an entire year, not miss out anything, and you're going to get this champion. But in my opinion, again, that's a bit too harsh, because several of these pieces were in a timed, content. A lot of them are in permanent content, but many of them were like qualify for Battlegrounds, Gladiator Circuit in that particular season. You can't go back in time and do that, so you can't really catch up, and having to spend 5k units, to get a piece of a bad champion, it's just unrealistic ask, in my opinion. So this is another thing. I think Deathless in theory was great. The execution of it, adding these pieces to timed content and having such an incredibly high, purchase value for them, I just think is quite mean-spirited at this point. Some of the biggest comments that I've gotten recently from players are like, I'm missing, this Deathless champion, 3 pieces. How screwed am I? Do I have to spend 15k units? And the answer is kind of yeah. You can understand Kabam from their point of view, kind of like, this was the original deal. We told you up front that, collect all the pieces, get the Deathless champions throughout the year, and you're going to be able to get that Thanos. At the same time, they executed this weird mix of permanent and temporary content, where some pieces could wait indefinitely until you go and grab them. Some pieces, could wait for a couple of months until you go and grab them. And some pieces you had to grab in that specific particular month, regardless, of your own personal circumstance. So it just feels like a Kabam could be better, more kind of forgiving to their player base for not breathing, sleeping, and, living this game 24/7. So, to conclude this all, I do think that every year Kabam reveals new issues in the game and kind of like a surprising lack of hindsight. I do think that it's probably caused by like a large turnover of the staff, or Kabam thinking that, they're perfect and the community doesn't understand anything. But the overall lack of kind of consistency and quality control is still one of the biggest downsides. The fact that Kabam releases AW metas and they need to, nerf it 2 times to make it playable. Or they release a list of tactic champions and it turns out all the attackers are shit and nobody wants to play that tactic. Or they release a champion like Silver Sable. How Silver Sable and Patriot got, in the game is a mystery to me. They shouldn't be legally allowed to sell champions that shit. And that's after 10 years of game development. So consistency and quality issues are still the biggest issues with Kabam. Lack of hindsight at times. That said, a lot of changes I think have been great to the game. Last set of CCP Necropolis challenges I think were tremendous fun, aside from the Dimensional Being one, but still much better than the previous set of CCP challenges. I think, the champion buffs have been very, very great this year. I think the changes to incursions, introduction of raids have been awesome. And I haven't even talked about the 10 big reveals that I did want to break down. So, updates, visual updates to the game, all for that. Love it. 60 FPS, absolutely love it. And, level cap increase. Again, it's a great thing, not executed in a way that anybody really likes, in my opinion. Don't love it. Again, change the menu backgrounds. The Grand Banquet, this shouldn't even count as a reveal. 10 times 10 7-star champions. Again, would be much more impactful had they made a bit different 7-star choices. But, giving Isophene for free has been an awesome move. New idols being released. Again, getting a lot of hype. Not necessarily sure Isophene is living up to that hype. But, still the Fractured Power Bar is a cool new thing in the game. And hopefully the next idol champions, will be great. Not saying Isophene isn't good, but she definitely isn't there. New daily super event. That returning. Love that for sure. Again, updates to website and stuff like that. I wouldn't have wanted to include them here, but definitely have to, praise for the change to 60 FPS. That was awesome. Probably the best change in the entire year. So that has been MCOC 2024. Let me know what you guys think, where the game is at. Better or worse place than the year before? Are you looking forward to the future things coming to the game? The game moving on also to PC. Or being cross-platform, playable on PC, all of that stuff. I generally, obviously, have had my issues with MCOC, just like about every year. But everything that I say is with the hope that the game just does better and better and better. And there are positive things that I have seen as well. So let me know. I'll catch you guys soon. Bye bye. Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about the next platform. Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about the